Wow, we are almost on the hour. Let me just see whether the live streaming started. Oh, yes, it did. It's very exciting. I've never live streamed to, well, anything, in fact, before today. So live streaming to Facebook this morning and was quite exciting. And I hope some of you were able to watch the what was it called? The trunk show that we had, which was at 11 o'clock Pacific. It's 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific right now. So we had the trunk show at 11. And then for some crazy reason, I decided to schedule the first live event for 8 a.m. this morning.
I'm afraid we have to amputate your arm.
Oh, someone got the radio on in the background, possibly. There we go. It was Melanie. There we are. No problem. Yeah, it's great to have you all here with us. Now, you were probably hoping to see Toni here hosting the sew along, and she was very much hoping that that would be the case as well. Unfortunately, though, she isn't well. I know I've managed to avoid everything circulating the Bay Area for the last couple of months, but just succumbed less than a week ago. So it's terrible timing for her. But unfortunately, she's lost her voice. She's not able to host today. So you're stuck with me. But we do have another teacher here, Liz. It was great to have you here, and I don't want to put pressure on you. But if you want to join in, then of course, more the merrier. And in fact, this is a sew together session. So if anybody wants to unmute and say hello, have a chat, then you're very welcome. And of course, if Linda has just turned her camera on, which is wonderful. Hello, and there's Liz. So if anybody does want to turn their camera on and give me a wave or anything like that, then of course that's it's waving. Then that's wonderful as well. I will continue admitting people from the waiting room as they come in. But of course, because Toni was going to be doing this session, I don't have anything prepared to do in particular. I think she might have been talking a bit more about the material she covers in her workshop. But with me, you're basically going to be stuck with the trials and tribulations of making a So Powerful pouch, which so far I have two flaps. I've got a blue with a pink lining and a pink with a blue lining. I don't know whether it's necessary to remember which one is which at this stage or whether they're kind of interchangeable, but we'll see. We'll see. And those are aggressively interfaced, if I'm honest, at this point. But if anyone else is working on their own so powerful purses, and this is of course the sew along, and if you finish one and enter it in the competition, you can win an Aliso iron.
All these, as Kay just said, tools, and I guess tool is the word of the day.
Just temporarily, there we are. So if anybody wants to share what they're working on, then I would love to see what else everyone else has got. Linda, you look like you're poised to share something with us. And you've got a lovely quilt on the wall behind you as well.
Oh, thank you. That's a wall hanging that a friend of mine made and gifted to me.
Oh, lovely.
Actually, I'm working on a personal project. I'm working on a hockey quilt, and I have one block completely made, and I'm working on the second set of blocks for it.
Oh, wonderful. Now, tell me, what is a hockey quilt? Is this a
Not
specific
a hockey, it's a
type
soccer
of quilt?
No, it's a soccer quilt. I'm sorry.
Oh, soccer quilt. Okay. I've only recently become aware of ice hockey in any depth. I mean, obviously, I knew it existed before.
Oh, well, but my grandson played elite hockey for like 20, I think they age out at 21 or 22. So I actually made him a hockey quilt using his jerseys and some of the other objects that used to be on their jerseys. I even added the skate laces in at the end.
Lovely, lovely.
So this is the first block that I'm working on, and then it's set with a Jacob's ladder block as the alternate.
Oh, that's a great idea. So it's the center that has the kind of novelty, the identity fabric in it. Oh, that's lovely.
Okay.
That's a great way of incorporating a lot of different like novelty type fabrics into
Mhm.
a larger quilt sort of for an adult as well. But when you made the quilt out of the shirts and things, were hockey shirts jersey
They're
fabric?
jerseys, and you have to actually, you just use them just like a t-shirt, where you actually back them with a lining, a light interfacing
Mm-hmm.
to stabilize them. And then I actually did it in columns because I had all kinds of different sizes. And he started when he was like 4 years old.
Oh,
And I think he
wow.
finished when he was in his early 20s.
Got
So I
it.
think I represented all the last one or two teams that he played with.
That must have been quite funny to look at, seeing all those t-shirts like going up in size over the years. How sweet. I'm about to start what's going to be an unexpectedly traditional quilt for my sister, using baby clothes from her two children.
Mhm.
Oh my
And
goodness.
sorry, what was that?
I said, oh my goodness, that sounds like such a wonderful project.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be lovely. And I've been hanging on to the clothes for a couple of years while waiting for other things to finish up and then for the timing to be right and so on. And I just mentioned to her a week ago that I was about to start this at last. And she asked me out of the blue for a very traditional design, with kind of star blocks and half square triangles essentially. And it's not my usual way of working at all. So I'm a little bit daunted now. I was going to do something a bit more avant-garde, like Mac Barnes's t-shirt quilt workshop that's up at the moment. But no, it's going to be traditional. So I'm about to start applying a load of interfacing to all these cut up onesies,
Uh-huh.
to maximize the fabric out of them. But it's going to be mostly white, which I hardly ever use white, to be honest. But there you go, celery.
Mhm.
Gina, what are you working on?
Actually, I am just learning to quilt, and I started a 9 block in a quilting class and had to drop out of it. So that is still in a package somewhere. And then I started Christmas, and then I'm in Florida, so then we had a few hurricanes that kind of held us up. So I'm not working on anything, but I'm hoping you can motivate me too.
Absolutely. Well, maybe the 9 patch just wasn't for you, and you're someone who's going to dive straight into curves or something like that,
My,
and that's going to be your beginning.
that
And
probably not.
Liz, oh, so
I'll
Liz, are
start
you
easy.
working on something at the moment?
I actually ran away. I put my camera off and ran away to get a big box of baggies, zipper baggies that I've been making. Am I
Oh,
able to show those even if they aren't specifically for this particular
yeah, go
charity
for it.
project
Yeah.
you're doing?
No, go for
Okay.
it. Let me
So
spotlight
basically,
you. There we
what's
go. You'll be able to
happening
see them.
is next, well, not next year anymore, this year, I am taking a group of ladies and gentlemen, actually, but although I don't think any of the gentlemen are sewing, to Alaska on a cruise.
Ooh.
And one of the things that I have decided to put in their goodie bags is a little zippered bag. So I'm making a gazillion of them so that they can choose. And
Mm-hmm.
the idea being they'll choose a number, and number one gets the pick of all of them and then goes down. So this baggie here is, of course, the humbug bag that I
Absolutely.
made specifically for the VIP class,
Mm-hmm.
that is coming up. Was it today, Bea? I've lost my list of where they were.
Do you
Was
know,
it today?
I can't remember now which one,
Okay.
because
Anyway,
I've
it's
been
not
deep in them
serious.
all.
Not serious. It is available to VIP people, and that was the exact example. But I am sending photographs to people that get the humbug bag video from me, and they will see more pictures. But anyway, these are some of the bags that I have started. This here was
Oh,
just strip.
cute.
You know, when you have a piece of batting
Mm-hmm.
and then you put a strip down and
Mm-hmm.
then
Yeah,
sew
quilt
down
as you
and
go.
flip it over. Yep, quilt as you go. And then I have a neat little thing. I like to work with very long zippers.
Mhm.
And this one was extra specially long because that's how much I cut off.
Oh,
And then I whoop the zipper, or just literally rip it so that little thing at the end comes off. And then I put that into the side seam. And so my baggie, this baggie happens to have two. This one happens to have black ones that I made with fabric from one of the stripes in the bag.
oh, how
Oh,
cute.
fun.
And I always do box bottoms on my bags because I
Mhm.
find them just so much more practical.
Yeah.
Here is another sort of a baggie. It's kind of fallen flat a bit because it's been in a box waiting for the cruise in September this year. But it's now a different shape. So on the side, you know, the zipper goes down halfway, and it almost looks to me like it's, you know, could be for tissues or something, and it's fully lined.
Now, is that called a DOP bag or no?
Ditty.
D-O
Ditty
something.
bag?
A what, sorry?
I think
Do
we
you
call them ditty bags here.
Ditty
Could
bags.
be,
Oh,
could be.
interesting.
I
Yeah.
should have actually put a loop on this one, and maybe I'll open up the seam and put one because
Mhm.
it's a bit flat, but I think it would be quite nice for cosmetics.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
if I go away on holiday, I hate rummaging in a little bag for things, and this opens up a bit, so it should be better. There are a lot of these. Do you want me to carry on?
Just show us another three,
Okay.
and then we'll
Here's
see what
another
everyone else is
humbug
on.
bag.
Oh, that's a lovely one.
Yeah.
And what do you
this,
put in one of those? With that
if you
peculiar shape?
yes, this one would be great for shoes because it's big enough. So you could put you know, you could make one for a pair of shoes depending how big it is and how big your feet are. Littly ones, I've made little ones. They're very fiddly, but you could put jewelry or medication in those. You know, lots of different things that you can do with them. Then that bag that I showed you, the blue one, here's
Mhm.
another one made with the same fabrics, but it's longer. And then
And these, I recognize these fabrics as well. These are the leftovers from the rainbow star quilt you had behind you earlier in the day.
absolutely.
Mm.
You are very clever, Bea, to
Yeah.
have remembered that. And then sometimes what I like to do on a little zipper baggie is add straps.
Mhm.
So this one is just a simple little bag, and it's box bottomed, and it's got a lining, and then it's also got handles so that if you want to hang it over a door in the bathroom, if you're away on holiday or something. So there you go.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks for sharing those. Those were all beautiful.
There's a lot more to go though. I have to make a lot so that they've got a good choice.
Mm. What about Laurie? We've got you there. Would you like to share? You've got another beautiful quilt on the wall
Sure.
behind
Oh,
you. Is
it's
that a
actually
quilt?
the fabric that I love.
Ah, perfect.
It's a K-facet, just a strip of fabric.
Lovely.
So my and Bea, you're coming to Sacramento in a couple of weeks.
I certainly am.
Yeah, so we'll see you there, and I'm in your workshop.
Wonderful.
So our local Modern Quilt Guild decided to do a challenge of a temperature quilt, which is where you take the high and the low of each day for a year and you put together a quilt. I didn't want to dedicate too much fabric for it, so I'm doing a miniature. And this is what I'm at so far. Each of the squares is 1 inch. So it'll measure 16 inches by 23. And it's paper pieced. I designed the pattern so that I have very few seams that match. So that's what I'm working on.
Oh, well, so you're working in strips on the paper as you go along.
So there's strips that go together.
That's clever.
And then so you can kind of see on the back how they go. And then I chose the year 2020 because I figured a lot of people didn't really know what the temperature was that year.
That's a great point. Yeah.
If they didn't go outside. There's real quick, there's a good website where they actually show you the highs and lows in the air. So it's a good starting point rather than doing it day by day in 2025, which would just drive me crazy. I'd never get it done. It would be an Ann Cardoza UFO
Yes, quite. And she'll be coaching live on one of these tomorrow. My goodness, though, 1 inch blocks, that's a lot of little pieces of paper to take out.
So this is an inch right here.
Mm.
So these are like a 1/2 inch and a 1/4.
And do you use a specific type of paper, or is it
I
just
went to the Dollar Tree so I could get the cheapest, thinnest paper.
Cunning? Yeah.
And then just drafted it on my computer and printed them out. So
Good idea.
yeah, I didn't want to spend too much fabric on it because I just didn't know how it was going to turn out. So I'm happy with the miniature size.
Oh, lovely. I know Lorraine, who Woodruff Long, who was one of the teachers and who was on the trunk show earlier today. Some of the quilts that we didn't get to from her portfolio were temperature quilts as well. And she's made some fascinating things. And I think one of them was on the front cover of some government publication,
Yeah.
which is impressive.
I don't think there's two that are alike because different temperatures, different designs. So it's kind of fun.
I know. I feel like when you're doing one of these temperature quilts in California, there's always a lot more kind of pinks and reds and purples than there tend to be throughout the year than there are in some other places where they get more into the greens and the blues and the colder colors.
Especially Sacramento.
Yeah. Ellen, great to have you here. What do you want to share what you're working on? Maybe not. Up to you. Oh. And then we've also got Willie here as well. Hello. And if you want to share what you're working on, you're very welcome, but no compulsion at all.
No, I'm sorry.
No problem. Unfortunately, Toni, who was going to be leading this session, had to drop out because she's not well. And so I have parachuted myself in, but without much to show for myself. So I am partway through making one of these so powerful, well, two of these so powerful purses, which I am determined to finish before the end of Saturday. Otherwise, I know that they will become those Ancardosa UFOs. And it's not like I'll use them for anything else if I do leave them.
B is the purse you're making. What pattern is it? Is that the name of the pattern?
Yeah, so it's the So Powerful organization. So if you're on the website, the quiltandlearn.com/sew along,
Yes,
it's all linked to
okay.
from there. And it's
Okay.
a free pattern that they have. And in fact, I've got it on my iPad at the moment. Let me see if it'll go to the main picture. Probably not easily. Here we go. It's not great to show an iPad on a
Okay.
laptop, but still. So it's a little crossbody bag.
Okay.
Because often they put it in various different ways on the website, but often girls in particular don't have bags that they take with them to school. So when they're menstruating, they don't have anywhere to carry, tampons and pads and so on. And so these bags mean that they can carry those kind of things and little personal things around with them. Otherwise, they'd have to stay home and just miss out on school. So it's kind of effectively enabling. I think that they say it enables something like an average of 6 weeks additional education for each girl, which is fantastic. They've got some lovely, they explain it much better on the website, and they've got all sorts of lovely videos and photos and so on. But it's an organization I came across at the Pacific International Quilt Festival last year, which is in Santa Clara every year. I'm sure Laurie has probably been there. It's actually changing or moving, or they're doing something with it, I seem to remember. But they were exhibiting there, and they just had a range. Oh, there you go, you've got the leaflet. Yeah. They had a range of these bags with them, and it just seemed like such a kind of obvious thing to help with, really. You know, I certainly knew a couple of people that might have some spare quilters cotton hanging around. And interfacing is something that most quilters have, you know, somewhere in their stash, for when they want to do something with a flimsier fabric. So yeah, it seemed like a great organization to partner with this time. And we'll have to see how many purses come out of it. Is anyone else working on one of these purses or intending to make one?
I I printed it, and I know my local quilt guild here in Lexington, Kentucky is doing it as well.
Oh, wonderful. That's great.
Or I don't know if it's the same
Oh,
project, but
no.
it's for the same purpose because we make things for, clothing to send to Africa
Wonderful. Yeah.
regularly. Shorts for the boys and reversible dresses for the girls.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like the
Very nice.
sleeve is the same, but the front fabric is different from the back fabric, and they can turn it around.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting. Um, yeah, yeah, it just seems like something that wouldn't take forever to kind of do and would be relatively easy. Although, of course, you know, I did then print out the pattern twice because I lost the first one. And
Yeah.
cutting it out seemed to take far longer than I thought it should
You'll
yesterday.
find it.
We'll get there. We'll get
So
there.
are you all, is anybody near the fire? Good.
No, I'm in Oakland, which
Uh-huh.
is quite far north of there. But it looks terrible. I haven't checked the news actually since this morning, but last night I was reading about it, and I mean it's sometimes
Oh,
it's
I'm not
hard
printing
to
40 pages.
oh, sometimes it's hard to feel too sorry for like millionaires that have lost things, but at the same time, I had a friend who was very wealthy and had lost his house in what was it called? Calistoga, is it? Cali? Well, anyway, a couple of years ago in one of the fires nearer here. And it is devastating because, of course, it's like all the children's first shoes and, you know, that kind of thing. It's just tragic what you lose, and quilts that have been handed down and so on. So, and there's plenty of non-millionaires impacted. So yeah, it's terrible, terrible. Um, yes, and only one of many climate issues going on around the world at the moment, unfortunately. But there you go. Jessica, did you want to share anything that you're working on, or are you working on something?
Oh,
No
well,
pressure
I
if you don't want
I
to.
am, but at the moment I had just come in
Yeah,
from,
no
I had
problem.
been out, and so I mean, where do I start? I don't, here's a very unglamorous part of A Quilts of Valor.
Oh, lovely.
I've got the first border almost on. It's, and I don't know, there's so much stuff here and there. My husband's out of town, so I'm like, and then this morning I was mending. You don't want to see my mending. But then I got so excited because one of the workshops today was about mending. And
Mm.
I didn't know that ahead. And I was watching it at long traffic lights and I haven't finished. But have you watched that one, that workshop?
Is that the one with Celeste?
I don't know her name. She's from South Africa.
Yes, there's
And
near Cat
Yes,
Shui.
just like me
oh, just like
originally.
me. Oh, how sweet. But she was
I know Celeste. She does a
uh,
beautiful teaching.
Mm.
now, and she was working on demonstrating her using her shui shui patches to mend her denim pants. And of course I had to turn it off because you can't sit and watch somebody stitch at a red light. And the traffic was bad, but I knew I had to get out and do a couple things because tomorrow we have another storm coming.
Oh no.
That's because we've had ice storm and snow. The snow that came Sunday is still there, and we're going to get 3 to 6 more inches tomorrow.
Where are you at?
Lexington, Kentucky.
Wow. Okay.
So, and my husband's in Colorado skiing, poor thing. But I got him out of town at 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, but right before they closed the airport for the
Oh,
snow.
wow. Yeah.
Yep. Yes.
Oh, well, it sounds like you're making the most of
I
his
am.
unfortunate absence. So.
I am. I ate popcorn for dinner one night.
Just talking about this kind of charity thing. I know, Liz, is it you that's been making panties?
Yes, I do.
Tell me about that, because I was fascinated. I have actually made my own panties in the past at a
Yeah, it's not
workshop.
hard.
No,
No,
jersey
it's
fabric and
super
some
easy, and
elastic.
I've now managed to get myself up to a speed of about 30 minutes for a pair of panties.
Wow.
And a zipper baggie, provided it's not complicated, I can make in about half an hour too. So I do both for charity. The ones I showed earlier specifically for my cruise, but the panties, how I got into that was I had so many bras and so many panties because I love making my own lingerie. And I don't do
You
custom.
mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, I
Fascinating.
don't do custom lingerie. I'll teach people how to make their own, but I'm not prepared to make for people. And then my drawer was literally overflowing with panties, and I
With
thought, this is
drawers.
ridiculous. Yeah, I had to go to
Her
2
drawers
drawers.
are
Yes,
overflowing with drawers.
absolutely, with different spellings. And so in any event, I sort of said to myself, you know, Liz, you've got more panties than you need in one lifetime. Maybe you should make panties for women who don't have panties,
Aw.
or who could desperately do with a nice, clean, fresh pair of panties. So I just put it out on one of the Facebook groups that I post on. It's actually a textile recycling place. And the next thing is somebody contacted me, and believe it or believe it not, she works the midnight to 8 a.m. shift in a public washroom on the corner of the notorious Vancouver Skid Row.
Oh.
So I've been now for what, 18 months delivering panties and clothing and toiletries on a regular basis to that washroom. And I can tell you, I nip in and I nip out, because what you see on the streets there, oh, it's so sad.
Is it
But
near
at
a
least
park?
no, it's just it's just known as Vancouver's downtown east side. It's just
Okay.
awful.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, you actually see people shooting up on the side. It's awful. In any event, I feel that myself and people who are helping me sew the panties, because it's really hard to keep up with the demand, it's somebody who needs a pair of pants is getting a nice clean pair of pants. And I believe some of them burst into tears because they can't believe that somebody actually made a pair of pants for them. And one lady stood and wept that nobody even knows when her birthday is. We're talking homeless people, we're talking drug addicts, we're talking prostitutes. So, you know, these are really people who could do with just a very basic thing like that.
So what do
So
you make?
Sorry?
I was wondering what kind of fabric you're using for your panties.
Knit fabrics.
What,
It's
knit?
just knit fabrics, so like jerseys and
Right.
anything that's got a sort of a minimum of 25 to 30% stretch.
Okay.
Bamboo jersey is wonderful because it's so soft.
Yeah, I have actually done 2 panty making classes. You've just reminded me. And the first one, we used quilting cotton and a lot of elastic. And of course, it's all very well when you're a little skinny mini to use quilting cotton. But as soon as you get to any kind of attractive size, you're suddenly talking about a lot of fabric, and it's not quite so fun. So yes, the second workshop I did was with jersey fabric, which I seem to remember was provided by Spoonflower. So you could kind of choose to have llamas or
Yes.
mermaids or whatever you wanted.
Yeah, panties can be as funky or as sexy as you might want them to be.
Yeah, because they're fairly basic, really, aren't they? It's like
Yeah, they are.
triangles.
I can probably cut out of 1 meter, and I've got 3 places now that have been donating huge amounts of fabric to me in this area in BC, 2 in Vancouver and 1 further on Vancouver Island. And I probably to date received about 75 meters of fabric, which is just so generous. I just cut it all up and give it out to the people who's sewing. But in 1 meter of jersey fabric, it's generally about 150 wide. Sorry, Americans, I'm metric up here. I can probably get 3 to 4 pairs of panties out of a meter. So, it's quite economical.
Yeah, amazing.
Do you put a tag on it saying it's from a certain organization or that it was handmade or anything?
No, I don't do that. This was just from my heart. I don't really need that. And in fact, when I started doing it was July last year in the summer. And I set a goal of 150 pairs of panties by Christmas. And of course, it was very new. I didn't have very many people sewing for me, and I was quite short. So I bought like a gazillion. Well, no, not a gazillion, but I probably bought about 2 dozen or 3 dozen disposable panties from Temu, if anybody knows Temu. And then that went there just so that I could say I made my goal.
Disposable panties?
Yeah.
Well, I never heard of
You
such.
probably don't want to ask.
They actually are made from fabric. It's not sort of non-woven stuff that's going to just tear and collapse, but they are not meant to be worn long term. They probably wouldn't stand up to more than a half a dozen washings, I don't think.
So where did you find a pattern?
First to get thrown out, the second to postpone the sentence.
I'm just muting Diane there because I think we had some TV noise. So Gina, did you ask a question?
I was just wondering where she would find a pattern for that. I mean, I'm brand new to sewing, so.
That's okay. There are lots of free panty patterns online. And the one that I've used quite a lot is Madeline Intimates in Pennsylvania. And you can go to her website and it is the Noel panty and you can download it for free. It's not my very favorite pattern and it is a full panty. So if you want something, more low, you just cut it down a bit. It's not that hard. So yeah, that's a good place to start.
Would you mind repeating it so I can write that down?
Sure. It is Madeline Intimates. And if you go to her website, just Google Madeline Intimates.
Right.
And then go through her patterns because she's got a section called patterns. And one of them is called the Noel panty.
Noel.
Yes.
Okay.
Just click on that, download it and print it out. And it's really quite a nice pair of panties.
Nice.
And what is your favorite?
Oh, my favorite is a pattern from a lady in Manitoba in Canada. And it's called the Smoothie Panty. So you don't have the seams on the side like you do in the Noel. The seam comes around to the front a little. So, if there was a seam that digs into your hips, that doesn't happen. And the front panel's nice and small. And you can make it from tighter fabric if you want it as a control panty. But I've made, probably of that pattern, I've probably made, I don't even know, maybe 400 or 500 pairs of panties over the year with that pattern.
To donate, is this for donation?
Oh, no, over the years for teaching, for all sorts.
Oh, okay.
But in the last 2 years, I can easily say I've made about 300 pairs of panties.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well,
I love doing it.
I found the link to the Noel pair and I've put them in the chat in case anybody wants to.
You're saying Noel. I was writing Noel. I'm like, what do they mean? Like no place to hold any.
B, I'm sure you get it as well. I mean, when I first came to Canada, people were teasing me all the time about some of my things because we talk about a boot and everybody looks at you like, the trunk.
No, absolutely. And I've just about to come up to my 10th anniversary in America. And of course, my family back in the UK tell me how American I sound. Whereas no one here thinks that at all. And but it took about 3 years to be able to choose which term to use, like boot or trunk. But it was after about 6 years, I think, that I was automatically using the American one. And so now I'll automatically use the American term when I'm talking to my sister and she'll be going, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. So.
I do say tomato, but I have never quite been able to bring myself to say banana. I still call it a banana.
Banana. No, I'm still banana and tomato, but I do now liberally talk about like going on vacation
Yes.
instead of
Oh,
on
yes.
holiday and things like
Otherwise, you
that.
get
It's like
lots
little
of deer
subtle
in the
things.
headlight looks because they have no clue what you're saying.
Mm. No, absolutely.
Anyway, that's my story about the panties, and I will continue to do it as long as it is fun and is coming from my heart, and I've got time and hands that work.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I know I had a bunch of men's underwear and socks to donate to a local shelter because right now there's like we're in a state of emergency with the snow and the it was 4 degrees when I woke up this morning, which may be nothing to someone in BC, but it's a lot for homeless people.
Oh, I
And I
know.
thought, well, I guess they don't really get to wash these very often, And I tried to, well, they were closed. I don't know what they were doing being closed at this place that feeds homeless people, but I know in a time of emergency, they rotate with other facilities that do the same thing, and they will do breakfast here and dinner there and sleep here. So I guess I was hitting them on the wrong days, but they have a shower ministry and they have food and they have shoes and socks and jackets and mittens and whatnot that they give people. But panties, I know they have a women's program too, but the panties sound like a great idea.
Well, I know socks are the #1 requested item at
Mm-hmm.
homeless shelters,
Oh, how
apparently.
pretty.
Clean socks, because having healthy feet is so important for mobility and getting access to what resources there are. And of course, I'm in Oakland, but San Francisco is just across the water, and so
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of homelessness. And during the pandemic, it was always all over the city, but a lot of the encampments moved into the center of the city. And there's been a state of emergency declared with the fentanyl crisis last year, which I think has improved. At least it's not being covered anymore. But I read something about another crisis happening on 6th Street, which has always been an interesting place to visit, 6th Street and Market. But yeah, it's not easy. And of course, yes, especially at this time of year, there's such a demand for resources from people. It's so difficult. Um, yeah, one of the projects that my local quilt guild has got involved with, because there's been a big move to convert some hotels into what are they're called? They're not like halfway houses, but they're kind of like to help keep people off the streets. And so they were converting a hotel into a 500 bed something or other, like hostel or something. And so the guild was making quilts so that every bed would have a quilt on it. And because a lot of these people don't have their own possessions, and so this would be something for them to own of their own. And then of course, I think like a lot of quilt guilds, we've been making preemie quilts for years, decades probably, and also quilts for foster children as well, who often don't have a lot of their own possessions. So yeah, so there's always bits and bobs like that to contribute to. And in fact, I've got a quilt bundle here, which I must start actually, which someone had made a top. And so it just needs quilting and binding. And then it's ready to go. But yeah, I know some people are so prolific with their quilting. It's basically the only thing they can do is keep giving them away to organizations, because otherwise they'd be knee deep in them around the home.
There's another charity called Days for Girls. I think you can probably go on online. One of the church groups here does, and they're actually making sanitary napkins that are reusable for the girls.
Oh,
Because some of them don't have a store where they can go to get them.
yeah.
And I think most of them are made out of flannel or materials like that.
Oh, no, that's a good idea. I've seen some of those on Etsy, actually, just for general use, because otherwise a lot of those things are very heavily plastic based. and are terrible for the environment. I remember just randomly, I was thinking about this morning for some reason. My sister was telling me about how the UK news a year or so ago was full of the fact that baby wipes were made of plastic, not anything compostable, which had amazed the nation, who had been busily flushing them, and there were all these reports of these huge baby white bergs in municipal drains and things having to be removed. Quite extraordinary. But yes, it's surprising sometimes how much plastic is in these things that you wouldn't have thought it was. Yes. So has anyone watched any of the workshops today that they particularly liked? Linda, tell me more.
I really like the thread painting one. I'm very interested in that. And that was one that I just totally enjoyed watching.
And have you actually put needle to fabric?
To try the thread painting? Not yet. I have so many projects going right now that I'm trying to work on. And I've got 4 great grandchildren that will be coming this year. So I've got one due in April, one due in July, one due in September.
Oh, wow.
And another one that was just born. So it was like,
oh my.
I need to start making some baby quilts.
Oh, well, congratulations, though. 4 in 1 year. That's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. And a wedding also in July. So,
oh my goodness. Well, congratulations. That's wonderful. Laurie, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I also watched the thread painting and I really appreciated it because she included a lot of supplies in hints on what to do. And then I also watched the free motion. She was, doing stippling and talking about really practicing by doodling. So I appreciated both of those. I thought they were really excellent.
Yeah, there's an assortment of free motion workshops at this event. And of course, I never quite know who's going to volunteer or step forward to teach. So it's always interesting to see when the agenda actually comes together and the different approaches different people take to things. Is fascinating. Yeah. I think there's got to be a moment of, I guess I always think of that oh God, what's his name? The Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Temple of Doom and so on.
Harrison Ford?
Harrison Ford, that's right. And the character that he plays, Indiana Jones. There's a moment in one of the films, the Sean Connery one, where he has to like take a step of faith into the unknown, and it turns out there's an invisible bridge or something. But I always feel a bit like that when trying a brand new technique. And I think that when I finally get to the point where I'm going to try thread painting, it will be that kind of like hold your breath and step off into the unknown. And I just know that it'll look awful to begin with, at least. And I was teaching a wreath making workshop. Well, I taught about a dozen wreath making workshops in December in San Francisco. And I had to tell everyone at the beginning that it's going to look awful. For like the first half is going to look awful because your brain is telling you this should be a circle and you've got like this rubbish little lump of greenery on the frame, and it's like you just have to bear with it. You just got to continue until it starts to look like something, because I'm sure thread painting with just one color, which you must start with, then that's not going to look anything good. So it's going to take a while to build up and actually become something recognizable.
That's interesting because I was watching the UFO workshop and it wasn't what I expected. It actually talks about the psychology of thought and how your thoughts project feelings onto inanimate objects in essence. And so it was really interesting. It wasn't something that I had thought of in that way. And so it was a rather interesting workshop.
Yeah.
I kind of tried to they're kind of trying to go down between them and catch the live events in between. So I
No, great idea
to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Anne is really interesting, and she's a full-time coach as well. And in fact, she'll be coaching live on the Sew and Tell the version of this tomorrow, which I think is at 11 a.m. Pacific. And yeah, it's fascinating talking to her. And I've been working with her. She's sponsoring the event. And yeah, it's just really interesting how the different ways of thinking about things and the kind of internal monologue that we have going on inside kind of affects these things and the very emotional connections or responses we can develop to different things. I know do you remember when Marie Kondo was
Yes.
brand new and was a great big thing? And there was this whole section of clutter that I can't remember what word she used to describe it, but it was basically emotional clutter, like stuff you were hanging on to because sentimental, right? Exactly. For me especially, like that's been a big thing because I've moved continent twice now and have had to clear out both times to minimize, and so you've become very attached to the things that have been with you for the longest, even though they're not necessarily the things you need in your life now. So it is fascinating.
Well, and a lot of us grew up with parents that were emotionally attached to objects from their past. And if you, like my child doesn't want these things.
No, they don't want our
Children
stuff.
do not want this clutter to them. They don't want any of those objects. It's funny what they do. When my husband passed away several years ago, I let my grandsons choose what they would like to have. One of them chose his tie collection, which I thought was an unusual. And he actually wore one of the ties for his wedding. He also chose tie tacks. The other one chose tools. So you just don't know what they're going to choose. It's kind of interesting. But no, they don't want what we considered sentimental to us. They don't find it sentimental anymore.
I do wonder how that's going to impact kind of quilt history as well. I think it's probably just as well that we're going to have a much better kind of photographic history of what's gone before, because we already see, I've been to what's it called? There's an Alameda antique fair that happens once a month in this area, and there's one of the tables there, one of the stalls, which is just piled high with vintage quilts.
Wow.
And I don't know quite how they get them all, but anyway, and so we were already seeing, quilts being made into coats and so on. But it seems like potentially there's going to be too many to even do that with them. What's going to happen to all these things that are being made in much bigger quantities now than perhaps they were before?
It's interesting because both my grandsons have had quilts since they were young. They both still have their original quilts. They also have additional quilts. But like my great grandson, who just is now turning 2 in about a week, he has a quilt. It's a hockey quilt because his dad played hockey and he's into hockey. And when I was FaceTiming with him the other day, he was pointing out the hockey player, the hockey puck. He understands about the goals in the net. So they're teaching him to treasure the quilt like they treasure the ones that they've received. So I think they are passing it on to the future generations. But I have a sister who couldn't care less about a quilt. She has one, but it's like, don't make me anymore. She doesn't really use it.
Yeah.
So you never know.
And I think as well, we have to think in terms of our stashes because mine is really quite big. And I said in the lab this morning, I've got 3 stashes: garment, lingerie, and quilting. And I remember years ago in a previous home, I downsized, so it's kind of even worse now. But I showed my daughter my collection and it was all labeled, in those plastic drawers. And she wasn't impressed at all. She just looked at me and she said, "Mom, what am I going to do when you die?" And I said to her, quick as a flash, I said to you, "Do not have to worry. You just phone this one and this one,
and
close quilting friends, sewing friends, and they will take care of it. So you do not have to worry." She seemed satisfied with that.
Goodness. I know. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, I had a friend that she passed of ALS about 10 years ago.
Mm.
And in her will, she stipulated that Jessica, that's me, to the executor was to put me in charge of all the things in certain rooms. It was everything to do with fiber, 3 rooms full of sewing, fiber, basket making, knitting, on and on and on. Because, and I quote, she will know what to do with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I did, and I disposed of the things I didn't keep in very caring and loving ways, which benefit, I mean, the things I got to do, and it was amazing because I got to watch some people consume these things. Like I was volunteering at the time at the Habitat for Humanity in the book and media department, but we also did like crafts. And these weren't crafts, it was beyond. And we had a special sale of her things that benefited, homes for the homeless or the, whatever. But that was part of it. But I dispensed with it in a very caring manner. And it was an honor to do so. But and I have been in the last year to at least 3 quilters estate sales, what we call them, where our guild will know like one of our former members or a friend or somebody has died, and we advertise it, and it's been wonderful because I mean there's someone I knew extremely well, and it was so much fun helping her daughter disperse the things that they didn't want, because both of her daughters and all of her granddaughters sewed, and each one of the children got machines and all that they wanted, and there was so much left. It took 3 weekends to get rid of all this.
Wow.
But you know what I mean? It's like if you know that you have a group of friends or someone that appreciates what you do, that is the best thing to, because then these things are not going in a dumpster.
Oh, no.
Because I know that my husband would dump everything I have in the trash unless I had provisions written and call this and that. And several of my sewing friends, quilting friends, have numbers that their husbands and children have to call. And like we have this little network of, because we're all like in our 70s. And it could, I'm not going to live forever, but you know what I mean? We are cognizant of taking care of these things.
Well,
But
that's sensible. And there's that acronym SABLE, stash acquisition beyond life expectancy.
Yeah.
I love it.
So my
Yeah.
whole goal for this year is to sew out of my stash. So every sew along, every project that I have worked on so far, I have taken fabric out of my stash.
Well
I have
done.
not gone and bought any more fabric. Not that I won't buy fabric. If I need it, I will. Or if I just can't live without it. But my goal for this year is to actually sew out of my stash.
Yeah, I was always amazed. There's only ever been one woman that I met who only bought stuff for her current project.
Me too. Only one person ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe it's the same one.
No,
And
well, I'm not sure.
no,
She
no,
lives here in Vancouver.
joking. Yeah, and I was just amazed that this was possible. It was possible to live like that. I couldn't imagine it.
No, I can't imagine it either.
Well,
Yeah.
considering the number of scraps I have for the number of years I've been sewing, I kind of almost wish I had done that. But then again, it wouldn't be nearly as much fun.
No.
That's true. That's true.
And it is fun to shop from your stash, I do it every now and again, and I try not to buy new fabric if I don't need it. But what the hang? You only live once.
That's true. And you can't take it with you.
And no one else will appreciate it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, now there's it's a bit morbid, but there's a program on Netflix that I watched don't know if it was during the pandemic. No, I think it was much more recently than that. That's right, because I was in this apartment. But it's Swedish death cleaning.
Oh yeah, I've got her book.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's basically there were like 6 episodes or something, typical kind of Netflix format, different person in each one, and then this group of Swedish people telling them like how to proceed. One of the people was actually terminally ill, which was difficult to watch. But you basically act as if you are about to die, and are getting rid of, like, if there are things that you want certain people to have, give them to them now,
right.
Yeah,
unless you really want to hold on to the thing. But if you're keeping it for someone else, give it to them, or find out that they don't want it, so that you can, like, they don't have to cope with it after you go, and things like that. And it's getting all your paperwork in order, and sorting through those rummage drawers and things like that. It's quite extraordinary. Kind of made Marie Kondo seem very, well, she is very huggy. But yeah, it was certainly a different take on that style of things.
Yeah.
getting your paperwork in order is really important. In fact, I had had some health problems at one point, and my husband had never handled any of the paperwork aspects. And he goes, I don't know what I'm supposed to do if anything happens to you. And can you put together something for me so that I know who I'm supposed to notify? So I took the time to do all of that. And I put it in a file folder with his name on it and put it in the front of the file folder, the cabinet. Well, he's the one that passed away first. Guess what I pulled? The very first thing I did was I pulled that paperwork, and I was able to go through and do everything that I needed to do because I had all of his information as well as mine. And I was so
Smart
thankful
lady.
at that time that I did that, because you are so much on autopilot when that happens.
Yeah.
That you're just going through the motions and you don't really think straight. So by doing that and doing it well in advance, I didn't have to worry about it afterwards. So I'm a great proponent of saying that should be done.
And making a will. It's so many people die without a will, and it's just a total mess when that happens.
Well, I actually have a living trust, so everything passes through without going through probate and a will.
Oh, well, that's clever. But I've talked to my sister about this multiple times. She's 2 years younger than me, because I've always had a will ever since I was 18. I've had some sort of will in progress, and she thinks it's morbid and doesn't want to think about it and so on. But she has 2 young children as well. And owns a house. My most expensive possession is probably my sewing machine, but it's not even going to be that much of a hassle when I pop off. But yeah, a lot of people they have a fear of thinking about it.
Yeah, it's
my husband's a trust and estate attorney, and he's on this trip. He's on a ski trip to Colorado, and I guess I had to get up at 3:45 in the morning to take him to the airport on Sunday. But after I got home and did what I did and went back upstairs to make the bed, on his nightstand, he has papers. Just, I know that he left those just in case.
Oh my.
He left,
goodness.
I know, because he's always said that if anything happens to him, I am to call this certain, the Glenbrook, this trust company, call these people. But that was what's laying on his nightstand. I was like, oh God.
Very thoughtful of him, but not entirely wanted.
Oh yeah, but yeah, he did call and check in, right? But that's why I was like hopping on here. He called me from Colorado to tell me something, and anyway, but I didn't say anything to him. I'm just like pretending it's not there. I didn't open it. But it is best because it's a sweet thing to do for people where it tells them that you've thought about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Well,
go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead, Linda.
The other thing is, and this is something that brought home, don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today. Don't wait until you retire to do things. we lived in Alaska for 20 years.
Ooh,
Good friend of ours,
Wow.
a good friend of ours was on a company charter, only 42 years old. That company charter disappeared. They've never found that airplane. And that brought home the fact that you don't know when your time is going to be.
No, you don't.
Oh,
So you start doing those things that, oh, I'll do this when I can afford to, or I'll do this when I can. So you start putting things off, and you just enjoy life because you just don't know. You really don't.
yeah.
So we should go and tidy our stashes, Bea.
I think
And
that's
give
what
away
it
what
is.
we don't use. Give away now what we don't use.
What we don't
Yeah.
want.
I think there's definitely some fabric I've been looking at thinking, why did I buy that? Which I should be
Yeah.
moving on to someone
And
else.
Yeah.
maybe take it to the guild and put it on the free table.
Oh, you've got one
Exactly.
too. Yes.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
I'm very
that-
naughty. I sometimes pick up from that table.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
so tempting. It's so tempting.
Well, another
Yeah.
thing to keep in mind while you guys are getting all your fabric stashes and buying fabric is that I have tried a couple of projects where I didn't buy enough fabric and I went back to
Oops.
get some and it
And
was
it was
all
gone.
sold out
Oh,
because
Yeah.
y'all are stashing it away. And I
Yes. We're
Well, and-
guilty.
so there
guilty
might be
as
other
charged.
people like me.
Well, look, it's been absolutely lovely to connect with you all and have this chance to chat. We are at the hour now, so I'm going to end the live stream and the meeting. But thank you so much for coming along and sharing your stories and your quilts and your lives. But it's been really great to meet you all.
You as well.
You
All
too. And
right.
thank
Have a
you
great
See you
so much
tomorrow.
for hosting. We'll see you tomorrow. And I'm going to go back to the workshops while I eat dinner. So
Wonderful, wonderful. All
Bye,
right,
all.
enjoy.
Bye.
Good night.